So in this video, I'm going to show how to use the Ultimatte externally for keying using the OWL setup in Composure. And basically I have the camera feeding directly into the Ultimatte, and then from there it's coming out the fill and the matte. Those are being captured into the system. And of course we use the matte to key out the fill, and the result is the keyed video. So we're going to start with, well, I have a basic setup here. This is just an HDR backdrop just to show something, little background, etc. We'll be putting the placement plane here. I'm using an out camera. I've already set that up for my camera in terms of the film back and the lens I'm using, etc. I've already got my media set up, so I've got incoming video feeds on both, which I kind of hide here. In theory, it keeps things running if they're in the scene. So we're going to start with a comp, and I'm going to call that Al comp. And then we're going to add a background layer to it using the Al CG element. And I'm going to call that LBG background. And then we're going to have our media coming in. But actually what I'm going to do for this media plate is I'm going to call this placement. So it's going to be what is used to place the video on the plane. And as a child to that, I'm going to create a second media layer. And that is going to be the talent. And the talent is going to be both the fill and the matte, which we're going to do separately outside of here in a key material. So we'll start with the talent and then work our way back up. So first thing is going to be the input. Typically in Composure I would use this media texture compositing input, but for some reason in this setup it doesn't work and we need to use the texture input. So for that, I'm going to have my fill, which is this one. You can kind of see it here. You can see that that's the matte. And then what we're going to do is create a transform that's going to use a material that would do the keying. So of course we don't need this for the keying. That's what Ultimatte or Composure would use, and we're going to be using the Ultimatte. So I'm going to create a compositing element material pass and then create a material. Now I usually put that in this VP folder, and I'm going to call that M_key. And opening that up, what we're going to do is set this to post-process. Now this needs to be set to masked, but first we're going to need to enable output alpha. And this can be set to masked. Now what we're going to do is set up our input of the matte, or sorry, of the fill first and then the matte. So we're going to do 2D parameter, texture sample parameter 2D, and we're going to call that fill. And then here we're going to set that up for the fill. And that is, again, this one here. Now for the capture of the matte, we're actually going to set up a texture object. And that's going to be the fill. And then for that, we're going to need a texture sample. Now, because of the way that the Ultimatte works versus Unreal, the white and black are reversed. So we're going to need a 1-, basically to just invert those. Now, because it's, of course, just white and black, we don't need RGB, so you can just pull the red over. Now we need an append vector. And RGB is going to come into here. This is going to come into both here and here, and then this is going to come into emissive color, and we're going to save apply and save and close. Now the second thing I'm going to do, the second transform pass I'm going to create here, is actually going to be for OCIO color. And basically what that means is that you have these different color spaces, and your camera is typically going to be a Rec 709 output, but but Unreal Engine itself uses linear sRGB. So we need to actually convert the color space. And now I already have the OCIO plugin enabled, which you would be able to find here if you don't have it. And I already have an OCIO configuration. I can leave a link on how to find that if you're not familiar. And then we're going to do utility Rec 709 camera. So that's coming in from the camera, and again it's going out linear sRGB to Unreal Engine. So now our colors will be appropriate. Now the next thing we want to do is set up an output, and that's going to be to a render target. So we're going to choose render target compositing output, and I'm going to create a render target. And again, I'll put that in my VP folder, and I'm going to call that comp_render target RT. And then for the render target, we're going to need to set that to the appropriate resolution. So I have my video coming in at 1920 by 1080. You may have yours at something different, but save that, close that, and that is essentially the setup of our talent. Now what we're going to do is come in here, and the render target we just created, we're going to create a material from it. So I'm going to call that m_comp render target. So first we're going to set this to masked, and then the main thing we're going to want to do here is set up erode. Basically the way that the outplacement plane works is that it has a lower quality video that is from Unreal. It's anti-alias, but it provides the reflections and the shadows within the scene, and then we're going to put a higher quality video on top of that. But we don't want the lower quality one behind it to bleed out on the edges, so that's the reason for the erode. Now to make that work, the easiest way is basically to come into all, search for erode, open up erode alpha, and we're going to copy, including the input, Control C, come back here, Control V, and we're going to set this also to the input of the comp render target. Oops, comp. There it is. And we're going to erode this by 2. And we're going to bring this into the opacity mask. Apply, save, and close. And next we're going to come in and set up the placement. And first of all, we don't need any of this, of course, but we're going to set up an input. That's going to be a texture input, and that is going to be the render target that we created, comp_render target. And then we're going to set up a transform pass, and this is where we're going to use the plane transform pass. Of course, now I haven't actually set up the plane yet, so we're going to do that right now. So it's going to be here, off-world live, video plane placement. And we're going to put that in the scene. And I'm going to set it behind this here. Oop, that one there. Let's see what it looks like from the camera. So something like that. And then this is going to be set to the material of the render target under mesh component. We're going to come down here and replace this with m_comp render target. And there is our talent. And then back here on outplacement plane, sorry, on the placement media layer, in the transform pass here, we're basically going to find this plane. There's only one in there, and set that. And then just a couple more things. We're going to do the owl background. We're going to actually do also here the OCIO. And is that even right? I don't know if I need that. And then our final parts here on the owl, we can see it's not actually composited yet because I haven't created the material for it. So first of all, we can set this to the target camera actor. Not necessary if there's only one camera in the scene, but if there's more than one, you kind of have to do that. Make sure our resolution is proper. Now I'm also going to set up OCIO here, actually in two places. So there's two things that I'm doing. One is preview. Now preview just means whatever's on the actual computer screen. And the second output is if I'm doing an output over, for instance, SDI, which in my case I am. So I need to do, again, the color space corrections there, or the transforms, not corrections, two different things. So first of all, for preview, I'm going to go back to my OpenColor and in this case, I'm going from linear RGB, the engine itself, and that's going out to the screen, which is sRGB, as opposed to a video output over SDI, for example, or to a TV monitor, which would be Rec. 709. Now they're very similar, so you might actually, not notice the difference, but they are a little bit different. Now the preview transform is actually going to be inherited by this background. So I don't need to actually add this here for the background color to be appropriate here because it's inherited from what I just did. Then because I do set up a SDI output, I'll just show this really quick, even though you're not going to actually see that here. And that would be where I set up, compositing media capture output. And I go out through media 1, and then instead of a compositing tone map pass, I use again the OpenColor OCIO. And go here, and again I'm going from linear sRGB from the engine out to a TV monitor, basically, which is Rec. 709. Now the main thing I need to do in here to make this all work is to come to transform passes, and I'm going to create a material, and I'll put that here as well, and I'll call that comp material, or let's keep our naming convention and do m_comp. Actually I'm going to call it Composure, just so everybody is clear. And this is going to be actually pretty simple. We're going to set this to post-process. We're going to create a 2D parameter, texture sample parameter 2D, and we're going to call this owl background. Now BG, I should say. And this needs to be the exact same as here, the spelling, etc. and that's going to go on the bottom, and I can just kind of do Control C, Control V, call the second one, of course, placement. Why didn't that work? Here we go. And then we need an overnode and RGBA. So essentially the video is on top of the background. That comes into here, and we're going to do simply apply, save, close, and now this is our comp. So now I have this pinned. Let's get rid of that. So this is now our comp. So then the final part of it is going to be, we're going to basically create a mat for this, let's call it desk. You can see in the scene, the placement plane is behind it. So the camera is actually seeing it behind it, reflections, etc. But Composure is seeing it on top. So we just need to basically put this into a foreground layer, and then change the material for the comp so that it is included in that. So basically that's going to be this, add layer element, and we'll use the LCG matte, and we'll call that Al foreground. And then we're going to select this. We're going to come over here to layers. If you don't have it, you can find it here under layers. And we'll create add selected layers to new layer, and we'll call this foreground. And then back here in the foreground, we're going to come down here to let me find it, select actors. Capture actors. So we're going to do capture actors. Actor set is going to be foreground. So then a little further up here is matte pass. So it's actually not going to be holdout, and it's going to be garbage matte. And then what we need to do is actually bring this foreground element into the comp. So if you remember back here, our comp material, oops, not output, sorry, is transform pass there, sorry, here. And we're going to want to add this here. Right mouse click, and we're going to do another 2D texture parameter. And we'll set that to Al foreground. And then we're going to bring this into our alpha. And apply and save, close, and now in our Al comp we should see what we were seeing before. I mean, seeing in here, not before, so it's no longer over, it's now behind. So that's the final setup. That gives us in the comp, so if you're doing an output from your computer over SDI, you'll get this. You could theoretically do it from here. Either way, that gives you your full use of the external Ultimatte with this setup. And then if I drive the camera up and down, etc., we see the talent in the scene as we should. Hopefully that helps. Thanks.